Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. So this one is against 23 Dragons. Let's get started. So b3, d5, bishop to b2. So this is the good old Nimzo-Larsen attack. It's from the white side, the bishop comes out to b2, pawn comes out to usually e3, and then something happens here, whatever it is. And that's that. So I play e3 once our friend 23 Dragons plays c5, knight c6, and knight f3. Just saying, if you play e5, I have two attackers on it, so keeping the control of some of the center. Bishop g4, good move, right? Saying now, okay, I've pinned your knight to the queen, and now I can play e5. So I play h3. I say, okay, if you want to play e5, be my guest. But if you play e5, I'm going to play the move bishop to b5. And suddenly, my bishop is threatening your pawn now because your knight is pinned. And so I hope that our friend on the black pieces will play e4, and I want to play queen to g3. Target this pawn, right? And if knight f6, I just play castles. Even if you play bishop d6, I always have queen takes g7, the bishop threatening f6, and I have h8 under attack as well. So, that is my goal, right? So our friend 23 Dragons makes the right decision, plays e6. Now I play queen g3 regardless, because I still think this is a very important diagonal to cover. Knight f6, and now d3. Now, I think I should have played bishop b5 to let the bishop out first, but in this position, I remember I had to prioritize not letting our friend go knight e4. So I played d3, queen a5, and now bishop to c3. Now, I'm going to be honest, this position looks really clumsy. And it's partially because of the development of my pieces, because if you notice in this position, if black plays knight b4, I have to play knight to a3. It's going to look really odd. While if queen a5 happens, I have to play bishop c3, or I have to play knight d2. But after knight d2, I have to think about what happens if knight b4, and now this pawn looks really odd, right? So I played bishop c3, queen d8 happened, and now bishop to e2. And at this moment, I sort of expected our friend to play d4 because, I'm sort of thinking it looks like the right time for black to just go aggressive, given that, if the bishop comes out this way, I take on g7, so it might be good to just close that diagonal, right? So no more of that. But our friend plays g6, and to be honest, I'm not sure if I like that move, or I'm not sure if I dislike that move, because I know that it may be hard to develop this way because of this g7 pawn, but I think this is creative, and it could be a step in the right direction, but it's hard to evaluate. So I played h4. Obviously, I wanted to provoke with h5, otherwise there was no other purpose, and I didn't really have any other purpose. So bishop g7, and I played h5. And after knight takes h5, bishop takes h5, bishop takes e3, knight takes c3, I missed these in-between moves. So I remember in the simul I was calculating pawn takes, and I don't even have to take this guy, right? I can play castle queenside and relocate my king to b2. So that's what I was thinking. But what I missed was the move queen to a5, right? Pinning the knight, and maybe queen to f6. And the reason why it makes such a difference between queen to a5 and queen to f6 is because if queen to a5 and white plays king d2 to protect the knight, there's d4. And if you bring your bishop back, queen takes c3, or if I bring my bishop back, queen takes c3, king to e2, queen takes c2, and so, the coordination of the pieces just wouldn't work out. So if queen a5 happened, I would have castles, queen takes c3, and I would have had to play something like bishop to f3, and queen takes pawn is coming. It's just not pretty. So luckily, our friend played queen f6, and it's just a teeny bit inaccurate, but it was so the right idea, right? Because now I get to play king d2, and there's no more d4 because there's no pin here, right? If d4, I just play knight to e4. So it's like that. So pawn takes h5, and now rook takes, and now king d7. I thought this was very clever, right? Swinging the rook to g8. As you can tell, I'm tired too. So, knight to b5 now comes on the board. So as I was saying, the rook wants to come to g8, but I need to find a way to not move my queen back because my queen defends f2, right? So initially I thought in my mind, what happens if I just play rook to g5? Just defend that g8 square. If you play h6, I'm going to back my rook back. If you play knight to e5, I'm going to play rook to f4 and just make fun of this queen. So I thought about that and I said, yeah, I'm not sure if that produces anything concrete. So then I said, are there any counter opportunities? And I was like, yeah, knight to b5. Going for d6. Maybe going knight c7. And sacrificing this rook. Checkmate. e5. Which is a decent move in my eyes. Queen h3 now. Now at this point, I still thought about, the rook is coming to g8 very soon. So what do I do? And to be honest, I didn't have anything in my mind right now. I was thinking, check, I had to get out of the file. So I played queen h3. I was hoping for king d7, thank goodness. But I think what black should have done is queen to e6 and offered the trade of queens because I'm not sure if I would trade because my pawns here are very big targets, right? So queen takes, pawn takes, I play rook to h1. Well, there might be, I don't know, rook to f8. I'm not sure. Something along the lines of just attacking these pawns. I know that, I get to play rook takes h7, but at the end of the day, black has knight to e7, right? So it's still pretty hard for white to win here. So I would probably consider keeping the queens on the board because the king is in a very vulnerable position. But in this game, king to e7 happened, and I was pretty happy to play rook to f5, queen to g6, and now queen to h4. I'm just trying to slowly inch up to this king. Because I really have no other way of doing it. I mean, I could play g4, solidify the rook here. If black plays rook to g8, I'm just going to play maybe rook to g1, or I'm going to play queen to f3 and go for f7, or I might just play f3. Who knows, right? But there might be h5 here. And after rook takes, pawn takes, there might be some queen to g2 action. Who knows? So I remember thinking, I'm not sure if this g4 pawn will stick because there's h5 and things will get all jumbly. So I played queen to h4 because when you are unsure what to do, you look for the checks and they spare you some extra time to think. King d7, and now I found my way in. Rook f6. Go to d6, keep attacking f7. My knight's there, thank goodness. Queen can come back to h3 and go along this diagonal. Then everything's working in favor of me. So thank goodness our friend 23Dragons resigned. So what did I really think was the winning combination here? Well, it definitely wasn't my opening because my opening was terrible. I mean, here after h5, knight takes, bishop takes, and the move queen to a5 was definitely a jailbreaker and a spotlight moment. Queen to f6 happened, and this is where I got my momentum back. King d2, moving my knight there. This one was a very big swing of momentum because I'd seen the attack and I'd seen what ideas I had in the position. So after e5, I just went check-a-mania because I wanted to find some holes that I could dig through. And rook f6 was a very committal hole that I was able to dig into and I was able to work it out. So in the next position, or the next game, e4, e5, f4. And this is a king's gambit. This is okay of an opening, but I'm not sure if you would want to play it in a tournament game. I think it works for people who don't know what they're doing from the black side. And obviously in this game, I remembered some theory, but obviously I don't study too much of the King's Gambit because I'm just not that kind of player. So I played Queen h4, and the whole idea here is after King f1, Knight c6, White has control of the center, right? White can play Knight f3, and the idea of capturing the f4 pawn will come much later, right? So if c3, Queen f3, Bishop takes f4 works, or Knight f3, just wait it out, and then later on in the middle game, White will take that pawn. So I played d6, suggesting that my bishop would come out, right? Knight f3, Queen f6, just still protecting this pawn. Knight c3, Knight e7, protecting the d5 square, something that is very important to defending this pawn, and something very important to White making progress. Bishop b5, broke the pin with bishop to d7. I think I could have also played probably the move a6 and just freed the bishop right away, but I decided to go with this approach. I'm not sure if bishop takes c6 was the best trade, simply because, I think this bishop has a very strong potential, and at the same time, this knight is really, he's trying his best, but I'm not sure if he is as valuable as this bishop on b5 here. Bishop takes, and now e5. So I was expecting e5, but I didn't expect it this early, because here this gives me, I think, a very conclusive edge. So pawn takes e5, and here if pawn takes e5, queen h6, keep holding on to the pawn. But if knight takes e5, I get to castle queenside, which is a good perk for dealing with that queen. So after pawn takes, queen h6, knight d4, I castled, thinking, I'm safe, right? I'm pinning white's queen, I'm having fun. Queen g4, king b8, bishop takes f4, and now the killer move, rook takes d4, pinning that queen. So the idea is after bishop takes, rook takes, you count the material, and black is up a piece. Just a solid piece for nothing. So what would I say for our friend 23Dragons to improve in this game? Well, you were doing great. I'm not sure if bishop b5 is the best move, considering the bishop's already on a very good diagonal, right, and a good square. But this part was okay. The trade was maybe unwise, and I think e5 was a little bit too early. Just go with another developing move, and especially with this knight, I got the win. So see you next time.